Spoiler alert, we're on the moon. But that's okay because I cheated, and that is for the purpose of this tutorial. Hello everyone, this is Dr. Aeronautics, and this is Orbiter Tutorials 10, which is RCS translation with gravity. Like I said, we're on the moon. It's not what you would expect. But, you know, it's a cheated version. This is a non-exploratory mission. We're not doing any exploring. So basically, what's happening now is, if you recall the translation with the international... Actually, no, it was with the Mir space station. We did basic fly around using the translation, which
Translation.
Is
Rotation.
go back and forth between translation and rotation to fly around the spacecraft. But all of that was without gravity. We're on the moon now, and we have gravity. And then you say, well, why can't we do this on the Earth? And the answer is because the gravity is too powerful there. We have hover engines, which are underneath our spacecraft, which can vault us up into the space. But the problem is atmospheric loss, and the excess gravity means that the weight is too high for us to be able to do anything about. So we're stuck on the moon. So in this tutorial, I will basically show you how to navigate from this area on the surface to one of these pads, which I will choose in a minute, and then we're going to move from one pad to the other, basically explaining how to work the translation all along. And I used to have a problem with translation because I used to think of translation as sort of a bearing with a distance, and that's a mistake because we don't have bearing and distance mounted engines. We have X, Y, and Z mounted engines, which means you have to think of the direction vector towards where we're moving as an X, Y, and Z component. Mostly, though, in this case, it's going to be X and Z and less of Y, because the Y is going to be controlled by our hover engines. So what this really is, then, is two-dimensional, two-dimensional, why can I never get this right? Translation, which should theoretically make it easier, but surprisingly, it's harder, unless I came a long way since the last time I had a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and open a few things. I'm also going to introduce the retro doors. Remember when I said in here there's engines within this pod here. I'm going to open that up, and it's going to allow us to do what's called retro burning. You can see now we can go positive, but it's not possible to engage the retro engines yet. That's because the doors are closed. But if we open these, we'll be able to sort of reverse thrust, and that way we
Radiator deployed.
consider the main engines to be a plus and minus Z-vectored engines. So we're going to open those now, and there they are. Those are our retro engines. They're more powerful than our reaction control system engines, which are here, so we can slow down or back up quickly. Okay, so I need to figure out which MFDs I would like. We're going to need surface, and the other one we have a chance to pick. This is going to be what's called a VTOL, which is a vertical takeoff and landing. And this is going to be visual. So normally we would be going into this VOR VTOL, but this is going to be a visual, sort of VFR mission. What is that, Venus? No, it's Saturn. They look a lot alike. Yeah, so this is going to be a visual thing. We are going to use the dock MFD so that we can get a relative speed to ensure that we're stopped. But other than that, although we could just look at this ground speed right here, so that's not really necessary. We're also not going to put the landing gear up because we're not really going that far and there's no air. That's right, there is no air. That's because we're on the moon, which has no atmosphere. Right then, I can't figure out another MFD that we would need, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the map on. Okay, so now we're ready to begin the takeoff procedure. And so the first thing that we want to do to prepare for takeoff is to switch the RCS to rotation. We're not going to, translation. We're not going to use any rotation this episode.
Translation.
Okay, so that's done. The elevator trim does not matter, there's no air. Just check on the radiator. That's deployed. I'm actually going to turn the music off so that it doesn't interfere. Okay, and then I introduced, during the reaction control system episode, these autopilots here. You have hover, hold, and level horizon. I'm going to use both of them this episode. But primarily I'm going to do level horizon first. That will force ourselves to be balanced level with the horizon so that we don't tilt over sideways. The Harrier jump jets need that as well, because if you don't have that and you flip over, well, then you'll suddenly be shot into the ground instead of away from it. So I'm going to do that right now, activate level horizon. And now it's beginning to use the reaction control system. If we go outside, you might be able to see a few pulses. There you can see a pulsing jet right there. It's doing whatever it can to level us out. And it will get stronger as we take off. Now the hover engines here are controlled with numpad O for increase and period for decrease. There is no retro hover engines, but there's no need because the counter to that is gravity. So what I'm going to do is take off, fly up to 200 meters, and then I'm going to activate the hover hold altimeter, which will do whatever it needs to do with the hover engines to directly balance out gravity, and we will hold 200. So let's see if the guy will announce takeoff, and if he will, then I'll go ahead and activate after that. Nope, maybe not. Okay, so we're using hover engines. We're going to increase, and we're going up. We're now off the ground. You can see our shadow right there. So there's 40 meters, and I'm going to... There's two numbers that we're looking for here. Vertical acceleration, which is basically how we control our lift, and our vertical speed, which shows you when our lift will increase or decrease. Wow. I forgot how low the gravity is on the moon. Okay, so we're going to null this out now. We'll go ahead and call it at 236 meters. There's hover hold, and you can now see that our true airspeed is 0, although it should be technically ground speed. Our hover hold is now activated, and we're now in a suspended hover above the surface. You can see our shadow here. To someone on the ground, we'd just be like a hovering helicopter, just right here sitting. And then this is how we're going to fly over to... we're going to fly to this pad right here. Which number is that? Okay, so we're going to fly to pad 3 first. And then for a challenge, we're going to fly to pad 6. I lied. We're going to use some rotation to make things a little bit simpler.
Rotation.
At least for the first episode. The second one, I'm not going to do this to make it harder. So now I'm rotating in space like a rotating hovering helicopter, which is pretty cool. You can see me rotating now. And that's pad 3 right there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the forward engines to speed up and then the retro engines to slow down, and I'm going to try and stop myself directly over the pad, which will be hard because I don't have radio. Although not that hard, because it's fairly simple. So I'm going to set it to there. And just like a takeoff, although we're going to decelerate using the retro engines. Okay, so we're ready to go. You can now hear the engines engaging. We're now moving towards the pad at 30 meters per second. You can now see we're moving along the tramway here towards pad 3. And then we're going to use the retro engines to slow down. I just need to keep an eye on that main fuel because if that runs out, we should have hours of hover time. But if that were to run out, we'd be screwed for, and a parachute would not save us. Okay, so that's the proximity detector telling me that I'm near the base here. I'm going to begin retro braking, activated with the numpad minus key. So you can now see our ground speed is slowing down. Wow. They're considerably weaker than they are in the XR2. I hope we can stop in time. Okay, we did. So that's going to get louder and louder, or higher and higher pitched as we near the pad. Wow, that tram really does move along at a good clip. He's overtaking us, and we're moving at like 12 miles an hour right now, which is pretty good. Okay, I'm going to call it there. Okay, we're now moving back the other direction.
Translation.
Now I'm going to switch to the translation, and now I'm going to find control. Okay, that's about as slow as we're getting. 1 centimeter per second is just fine. I am going to move forward a little bit, though, because I do want to be more accurate with this landing to try and land directly on the 3.
Translation.
Okay, so now you can see I'm controlling with the translation. The way we do this is by getting the velocity vector right there, and then holding down the negative Z key, and then that should stop us. Perfect. Okay, we're now stopped directly above, maybe not directly above, but... Oh, great, next thing you're going to tell me is that I'm on the other side. Oh well, it's going to be much faster doing it this way because I can kill the velocity much more quickly. Okay, that should be good. Again, just trimming using the Z engines. Okay, we're stopped now. We're going to keep holding the level horizon, but we're going to disengage the hover held altimeter, and this is where we have to be very careful. We're going to let gravity pull our vertical acceleration up, and then our vertical speed will increase. And at a certain vertical speed, I'm thinking about 5 meters per second, we have to null the acceleration in gravity. We will then move towards the ground at a steady 5 meters per second, and then we will have to use bursts of positive acceleration to step the vertical speed down. And I want touchdown velocity to be less than 0.2 meters per second or 20 centimeters per second. That should yield a fine touchdown. We're directly above the pad now, so we can commence the landing now. I'm going to find the shadow there so that we can track it as we land. So I'm disengaging the hover hold altimeter in 3, 2, 1, now. And now I'm going to release the pressure. We are now falling. Okay, I'm going to null the acceleration right now.
200.
So go a little bit further down. I'm going to let us accelerate to 4 meters per second, and I'm going to cut it off there. So that is going to be our initial landing velocity, or I should say, that should be our initial approach velocity. I'm going to slow that down. So now I'm holding 3 meters per second.
100.
And there's 100. So I'm going to decrease to 2 meters per second now. And this is controlled by throttling the hover engines. So there's 1.86 meters per second. Still looking fine on fuel. And you can see there our shadow now is beginning to approach.
50. 40.
Okay, there's 35 meters.
30.
I'm going down to 1 meter per second.
20.
You can see we're approaching the pad now. At 10 meters, I'm going down to, well, I'm there actually already. We're now at 0.5 meters per second. It might just turn out that we might impact the ground. Well, I'm actually going to have to, yeah, okay, so. Alright, well, there's target, but we're going to accelerate a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that now. This becomes tricky now. See, what I can do is completely null it with the hover engines, and then use the Y engines of translation in order to control that even more. So we're coming down for a graceful touchdown now. Oh, we're so close, but again, we're going to have to counteract for this. Okay, there's touchdown, about 7 centimeters per second if I could tell. I'm taking all hover pressure off now, and we can deactivate the level horizon autopilot. So now we're stopped on the ground again. And we're on the 3, so that was very successful. So now we're going over the building to 6. And this time I'm not using any rotation, which means we're going to have to use 2 dimensions, which is a little bit more tricky. It's not like driving a car. It's kind of like adding momentum in different directions. It's the best way I can say it. Okay, so we're on translation, and like I said, this is where you have to think of motion in X, Y, and Z, not a angle and direction, because you will find yourself not being able to reach the pad if you do that. Level horizon altimeter, not altimeter, level horizon autopilot engaged. Increasing hover engines now. So we're off the ground again. We're accelerating vertically. I'm going to cut the vertical acceleration now so that we're going to drift upwards. Oh shoot, we're way above that tower. I thought it was much taller than 200 meters, but that's not the case. I don't want to go this high, so now I'm going to kill it using some reaction control system translation. And I'm even going to let myself fall some, so we're now falling back down to the surface.
400.
I'm going to let this happen. Now I'm going to null the acceleration so that we don't go down too
300.
far. There's 300. So I'm going to go ahead and stop us now. There's 200. Kind of tricky. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to engage the hover hold altimeter. We're now at 235 meters, which, if I'm not mistaken, that was the same cruise altitude as the first time. But this time, we're going to use our translation to get there, which means I need to hold down the 6 key so that we move forward. And now you can see our true airspeed is increasing. And it's in front of us. But we need to go over here. So to do that, we're going to hold down the 3 key. Now we're going to add some velocity component in the X direction. And we're now heading towards the pad. We're also drifting, as you can see here. I want to move a little bit faster, so this is where we have to be careful. I'm going to continue adding in this direction. But we have to be careful because the longer we hold it down, the longer it's going to take us to stop. Now, where did my... There it is. Okay, we're pretty much on track there. And this may look easy, but one time I just decided to take my Delta glider out for a spin, and this is when I had gotten from the Earth, which I don't want to spoil the view actually. And I said, okay, I'm finally going to learn this translation stuff. I'm going to go from one pad to the other, and let me tell you, I got utterly lost. I was spinning out of control way out on the lunar desert. And I was not able to, I was able to turn the velocity vector around, but I didn't think to stop, so I kept on passing the pad by, and then I would keep on swinging around, and I was never able to, I stopped close, but I was never able to precisionally send the vector over the pad, and because of that, I suffered greatly learning translation. I actually forget how I learned it, but it's like one day I was doing something. It might have been docking, actually. I think it was probably with docking, and I thought, hey, this is just like docking, except from a different angle. And then I think that was what got me to actually understand how it works. Okay, now I'm going to begin reverse. Using the opposite engines that we were using to go ahead and slow us down and stop us. So now I'm killing velocity in the Z direction, and now I'm killing it in the X direction. And we want to try and get stopped completely again. There's the Z again. Okay, we're heading back the other direction now. That's pretty close. 6 centimeters per second. That's 1, 0. Okay, so we're now stopped above pad 6. So what we do now is the exact same thing we did. We're landing, so we're going to go ahead and disengage the hover hold altimeter. And we're going to let gravity take over, accelerate to 5 meters per second, and now I'm going to add back
200.
the engines. So now we're holding that velocity down towards the surface. And again, we're going to decrease that as we go. We may need to move a little bit more towards the center of the pad, which we can do halfway down if we need to. Okay, there's 100. So I'm going to bring this down to 3 meters per second.
100.
Yeah, I'm going to go forward a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is while I'm now going to control motion in 3 dimensions. While I'm going down, I'm also going to go to the side. Okay, so there's 50. So we're going down to 2 meters per second.
40.
Okay, so now I'm going to kill my horizontal
30.
velocity. I can't tell exactly this time, but if we're going, we have wheels. We can just roll a little bit.
20.
But we're not moving for the most part. Whoops. Okay. Let's see where we are. Okay, so I'm going to try and hold this. There we go.
10.
That's exactly what I wanted. So now we can find control our velocity. Whoops. With the... there now you see I'm controlling velocity with my Y engines of the reaction control system, which is handy. You can see the vertical acceleration is producing on the craft. So we are moving forward a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and kill that now. And there, that's touchdown. Hover engines off. And the level horizon off.
Rotation.
Attitude off.
I'd call that a flawless mission. That was really excellent. on everyone's part. So go ahead and turn these off and close the doors. Yeah, so that's it. We've come to rest on the surface again. I thank you guys for joining me for this tutorial. It was a quick one. But hey, the next one is a big event. We're actually going somewhere in space. As opposed to just, going somewhere and doing whatever. We're going to go dock with the International Space Station. And I'm going to explain everything about launch window determination and orbit synchronization and matching acceleration profiles, and a whole bunch of other really cool things. I will demonstrate using a math equation how to determine a launch window and exactly when you want to go, and how to factor in atmospheric loss as well. So this has been Dr. Aeronautics with tutorial 10, and I will see you guys next time. Back on the Earth, of course. Bye.